Hello. Okay, we are continuing with our AAT 1.2 notes. This is part 2. We're starting on page 5. So remember we were talking about graphing lines and how you can plug in any points and those points will work on the line. So here we're looking at some lines in standard form. This one's in standard form. But again, if we choose any x to plug in, if I plug in x is 0, I get 3 times 0 equals, minus 2 times y equals 12. So 3 times 0 is, of course, 3 times 0 is, of course, 0. So we divide both sides by -2, and we get y equals -6 for a point. And if we plug in 0 for y, we get 3 times x minus 2 times 0 equals 12. So that, of course, 2 times 0 is gone. And we divide both sides by 3. Divide by 3, divide by 3, and x equals 4. This, when x is 0, is the y-intercept. When y is 0, that's the x-intercept. So when we're in this standard form, it really is a quick way to graph it to find the x and the y-intercept. So we're going to now plot those. The x-intercepts at the y-intercepts at -6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Make sure you're going the right way. The x-intercept is at 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's our first line for A. Make sure if you're doing more than one graph on the same coordinate plane that you label. This one's A. Okay, so for the next one, we're going to find the x and y-intercepts. So plug in 0 for x. This is the y-intercept. We also talked in Algebra 1 how you could just, if you're finding the y-intercept, you can just cover up the x because you're plugging in 0 for x with your hand and just solve that little equation. If you plug in 0 for x, you have 1/2 y equals -1. So to get rid of that 1/2, we're going to multiply the whole thing by 2 or flip the fraction to the other side. So y equals -2. So that's the y-intercept. So for the x-intercept, remember from Algebra 1, we talked about we're plugging in 0 for y, so we can basically just cover that up, and 1/3 x equals -1, because if we're plugging in 0 for y, this is all gone, and we get 1/3 x equals -1. So we're going to flip that 1/3 to the other side. We're multiplying by the reciprocal, multiplying the whole thing by 3, so it's gone on this side, and we get x equals -3 for the y-intercept. So for this graph, 1, 2, 3 for the y-intercept. That's the x-intercept. 1, 2, -3. 1, 2, 3 for the x-intercept. And y-intercept's -2. 1, 2. So 0, -2 is the y-intercept right there. And -3, 0 is the x-intercept. That's what happens when you try to go too fast. And we'll make our line. So that is line B. Okay, a linear equation can be written in the form y equals mx plus b or ax plus by equals c. A linear equation has a degree of 1. That's what we talked about earlier, meaning those exponents aren't going to get any higher than 1 or getting any lower than 1. This means that both x and y have exponents of 1 only. So there are your two main forms. We also have point slope form, which we'll talk about later. No, when you're in standard form, A, B, and C are just nice little integers. They are not fractions. So when I look at this one up here, this is definitely standard form. 3 is A, -2 is B, 12 is C, ax plus by equals c. But this isn't quite standard form because we have fractions in it. So we really, if we wanted it in standard form, would need to multiply everything by the common denominator to get rid of all those fractions. But when you see it in this standard form, you can easily find the slope by doing negative a, the opposite sign of a, over whatever b is. Slope-intercept form we talked about, m is the slope, b is the y-intercept. So write the equation in slope-intercept form. So we're trying to get it into y equals mx plus b. That has a slope of 1/6 and a y-intercept of 3. So easy. Y equals 1/6 x plus 3. Slope, y-intercept. Find the slope and the y-intercept of the following. Okay, so this is similar to standard form, but it's not exactly standard form. Standard form should not have fractions. So I can multiply everything by the common denominator 4 to get rid of the fractions first if I wanted to. So if I multiply this by 4, you can think of it as 4 over 1. The 4's cancel, and you just get 3x. If I multiply the 2 by 4, I get 8y. You have to do it to every term. If I multiply the 3 by 4, I get negative 12. So now it's in standard form. Make sure you're writing this down, taking good notes. And then our slope, when it's in standard form, is the opposite sign of a over whatever b is. And a is 3, so it's negative 3, the opposite sign, over 8. And then the y-intercept, remember the y-intercept is where x equals 0, and that's always true. So if I make x equals 0, I'm essentially covering that x up because that term all goes away. And I get 8y equals negative 12. Divide by 8. And y is negative, let's simplify that by 4. We divide by 4. On the top and the bottom, we get negative 3 over 2. So there's the slope. There's the y-intercept. So make sure when you're finding these things that you show your work. Make sure you really understand. If you don't, pause the video and go back. Try it by yourself. Okay, flipping on over. Write the equation in slope-intercept form of each line. So if we want to put it in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, we need the slope and we need the intercept. So make sure your intercept's on an integer. Here, my y-intercept is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so 0, 5. And then find points where it's actually, make sure it's crossing at an integer. So like here, this looks like another point. Here, this looks like another good point. We don't want fractional points. So if I use this next point here, what is my slope? I'm rising 2 from 5, and I'm running 3. And make sure the direction, this is a positive slope line. So for y equals mx plus b, I see my y-intercept is 5, and my slope is rise 2, run 3. Don't forget your x. For line, oops, that is line B. We'll do a switcheroo here. Okay, for line A, let's find our y-intercept and our slope, and pause here and see if you can find, and then come back and check. See if you can find what y equals mx plus c is what y equals mx plus b is actually equal to. Okay, so that one, the slope was -2. Make sure a line that falls going from left to right is a negative slope. Rise 2, back 1, -2x plus 5 is the y-intercept. Okay, so example 10, find the equation of a line in slope-intercept form that has all these characteristics. So the last form we haven't talked about is point-slope form. Point-slope form is what you use when you want to get something into an equation. It's y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, where m is the slope and some point you're given or that you have is x1 and y1. So on this first line, we have 2 points. So we can use either one of them as x1 and y1. So I'm going to call x1 2 and y1 4, but I could have used those. And I'm first going to find the slope. So the slope is y minus y, so 5 minus 4, y2 minus y1, over x minus x, 3 minus 2, difference in the y's, difference in the x's, which is 1 over 1, or 1. Now we put it in that y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So our y and our x here are our variables. They stay the same, but my y1 is minus 4. This should always be subtraction, but it's a positive 4. And then our m there is 1, and our x1 is 2. So that is the equation of a line, and now we move it to the slope-intercept form, whatever form they ask for. So we want slope-intercept form as y alone. So we distribute if we have to here, but we really don't have to because that's just a 1. So we have y minus 4 equals x minus 2. We add 4 to both sides, and we get y equals x plus 2, and that's the equation. How do you check it? Well, you check it by just plug in the points you're given and make sure that they make it true. If I plug in 3 and 5, 3 is the x, 3 plus 2 is 5, and so that gives me that good fuzzy feeling that I'm nice and smart and doing it right. Okay, next one, same idea. We're going to start with point slope form and move it around. So we got y minus the y value, negative 2, equals m is 3/4 times x minus the x value, which is 4. Okay, so the hardest part of this one is just simplifying it right. Again, I'm trying to get it into y equals mx plus b slope-intercept form. So I'm going to simplify it a little bit. Y plus 2 equals, I'm going to distribute here, 3/4 x, 3/4 times 4 over 1. The 4's cancel, and I get minus 3. And I need y by itself. Think about where you're going. So I'm going to subtract 2. And y equals 3/4 x minus 5. Okay, again, I can plug in that point for negative 2 and see that the slope is 3/4 to double check. Okay, contains the point negative 2, 3, and parallel to this line. So when it says parallel, what does that mean? That means that it has the same slope as this line, and same slope makes sense because if the lines are going the same direction, that slope's the same, they're going to be parallel lines. So the slope of this line is negative 4, so the slope of the parallel line, those little lines there mean parallel, is also going to be negative 4. So y minus y1 equals m x minus x1, point slope form again. So our y minus and our x minus are going to be there already. But y1 is the y value of the point, which is 3. Oops, I'm running out of ink there. Get a different color. That's 3 for our y1, and our x is negative 2. And our slope, remember we found our parallel, was negative 4. So that's the equation, but we want it in y equals mx plus b. So y minus 3 equals distribute negative 4x. Negative 4 times a positive 2 is negative 8. I'm going to add 3. And my final answer is y equals negative 4x minus 5. You can plug in that point. It's worth your time to check. Make sure you're going to get a better grade. Okay, last one on this page here is containing the point 1 2/3 and perpendicular to this line. So if a slope is perpendicular, the slopes are going to be opposite reciprocals of each other. You remember that. So you're going to flip it and change the sign. So the slope of this first line is 3/4. That's all I care about. And then I'm going to throw out that line. So the slope of the line I'm looking for is perpendicular. That's the symbol for perpendicular. I'm going to flip it 4/3 and change the sign to negative. It's the same thing. Y minus y1 is 2/3 equals m is negative 4/3 times x minus x1 is 1. Looks kind of yucky, but when we're simplifying, always try to distribute first. So negative 4/3 x plus 4/3. Then if you want to, you can get rid of the fraction by multiplying by 3, but since we want y alone, let's just go ahead and add 2/3 to both sides. For adding fractions, make sure you have common denominator, and y equals negative 4/3 x. And we get 4/3 plus 2/3 is 6/3, and 6/3 is just 2. But I can plug in this point and check to make sure that's correct. Okay, so the last one, I want you to graph all 3 of these lines. I want you to pause here and try it by yourself, and then you can come back and check it. Okay, here are your final answers. A is the orange line. It's a negative slope, so make sure it's going this direction with a y-intercept of -3 and a slope of -2/3. B, know if it's y equals, it's a horizontal line. You shouldn't have to even think of that. It's just y equals a number. Find where y is 4 and make a horizontal line. That's B. Slope is 0 for a horizontal line. Y-intercept is at 4. Here's a standard form. Remember, the slope of a standard form is -a/b. So your slope is 2. Your y-intercept, remember, we can just plug in 0 for x. The y-intercept is -4. So there's that line right there, C. And D is x equals -1. This is that purple line. D is a vertical line, undefined slope, x equals a number. So if you see x equals a number, immediately know it's a vertical line and find where x is -1 and make that vertical line.